You probably read the title of this video and thought, how many Pokemon games are there? Well, there's Pokemon Red and Blue, then Yellow, Gold and Silver, Crystal, then thought of more main series games, but wait a second. What about games like Pokemon Snap or Pokemon Stadium? They were some of the first earliest spin-off Pokemon games, and spin-offs count too, of course, right? Or maybe they're considered side series games? The Mystery Dungeon games are a series that definitely isn't main series, so they would be side series too. But how many of those games are there? Then there's weirder ones. Anyone remember Pokemon Troze for the DS? I loved this game when I was in the 4th grade. I don't think I really knew what I was doing when playing it, but if you slap Pokemon on it, then 9-year-old me probably loved it, which is also true today. Now, around that same time I was playing Pokemon Troze, I discovered this weird phone operating system that was Pokemon based. I really wanted it, but it wasn't available in North America. But is it a game? To start things off, let's just get the main series Pokemon games out of the way, which I'll show on screen. There's 38 of them. Sort of. The Let's Go games, as well as Legends Arceus, are sometimes seen as non-main series Pokemon games by some fans, but Game Freak said they're main series, so I guess it'll count. People will still comment about this regardless, and they'll also probably comment on my pronunciation of Arceus. Is it Arceus, Arceus, Arceus? I don't know. And I'm not really sure what constitutes as main series by Game Freak or Nintendo standards for that matter, or even the Pokemon Company standards maybe. Since Pokemon Coliseum and XD Gale of Darkness are not main series Pokemon games, although they share a lot of main series elements and can trade with main series games, but more on those games a bit later. Now here's another question. Do each version of these main series games count as separate games or the same game? If you look at Pokemon Black and White, for example, they are mostly the same game but have minor differences between them, but if you look at the way the game sales are calculated, they're lumped together as one game. If we were to split these games apart, then the count for main series games would go down to only 22. That still doesn't sound too complicated though, right? Well, then we take a look at Generation 1. How many games do we count here? Well, technically there's 6 for Generation 1 alone. There's the original Pokemon Red and Green released in Japan, then the original Blue version released in Japan shortly after that was an updated version of Red and Green, then the international releases of Pokemon Red and Blue, and then finally Pokemon Yellow, which started the trend of the Japanese games and the international versions being released the exact same. Some regions may have to wait a year or more longer, but it isn't something like if you were to compare the original Red and Green to the Red and Blue games released outside of Japan. Things get even weirder when you look at demos released for Omega Ruby, Alpha Sapphire, and Sun and Moon. These are games you could still download and play on your 3DS, and they have some elements that the final counterparts don't have. For the sake of this count, I'm going to leave it at 38 and not count these demos, but just know that one of the reasons why this stupid asterisk is next to the count is because of these demos and Game Freak releasing Generation 1 6 times in 3 years. Now I am also using Bulbapedia's list of Pokemon games to reference most of these games, and they don't officially list the Sun and Moon or Omega Ruby Alpha Sapphire demos, but we'll talk about other demos that they do list as games later on. So now what about side series games, or spin-off games? I'm not really sure what to call them or what the difference is between these two, but again, according to Bulbapedia's page on every Pokemon game, it has them listed separately in a few different categories. The list of side series games starts off with the Pokemon Stadium games. All 3 of them. Yeah, that's right. 3 Pokemon Stadium games. In 1998, the first Pokemon Stadium game came out in Japan and was never released internationally. It's similar to the Pokemon Stadium game that was released internationally with the same title only a year later, but the original didn't have all 151 Pokemon in it at the time and had a few less features. The strange thing is the first Pokemon Stadium game released outside of Japan also released in Japan, and then Pokemon Stadium 2 came out, although in Japan it was the 3rd Pokemon Stadium game. This bumps our count to 41 games, and next up we have Coliseum and XD and Pokemon Box. Pokemon Coliseum and XD are pretty self-explanatory, and they are definitely games, but what about Pokemon Box? Some of you guys might not know about this game if you want to count it as a game even, since it's basically just Pokemon Bank but back in 2003 for your Ruby and Sapphire games, and you can only get it from the official Pokemon Center store, which is now the Nintendo World Store, or if you ordered it online, which wasn't a very common thing to do in the early 2000s. Sure, it existed, but not nearly to the extent that it is today with things like Amazon. In terms of Pokemon Box, there isn't much, if any, gameplay in this game? But if this counts, then what about Pokemon Bank, Pokemon Home, and My Pokemon Ranch on the Wii? These are all successors to Pokemon Box for later generations in one way or another, with Pokemon Ranch being the most game-like game of them all. And if we count them all, it'll bring our count to 44. The only other game listed on Bulbapedia for the side series section is Pokemon Battle Revolution, which is essentially Pokemon Stadium 3, not to be confused with Pokemon Stadium 2, the third Pokemon Stadium game in the series, but Revolution does have similar battle elements. Why must they make this so complicated? With our count at 45 now, let's move on to spin-off games. Now, spin-off Pokemon games is a term that is used often to describe any game that isn't a main series game like Red and Blue or Crystal version. That means there should be a lot of them, right? Nope, only 2, at least according to Bulbapedia. I know Bulbapedia isn't the end-all be-all for Pokemon information like this, but they're the best place I found for an organized list of all these games. At least most of these games. I say most because, well, more on that later on again, but for side series, there's Hey You Pikachu and Pokemon Channel. Hey You Pikachu is basically Nintendogs, but oops, your dog is a Pikachu, and Pokemon Channel is, well, I don't really know how to describe Pokemon Channel. You basically just watch clips of the anime. I can't really show gameplay because of this, but is it a game? If it does, it brings us to 47 and has about as much gameplay as you would see in Pokemon Box or the Pokemon Coliseum bonus discs. So does the Coliseum bonus disc count too? It's not listed on Bulbapedia, and in Europe this is really the Pokemon Channel bonus disc and has a few differences, with the main reason to even get this disc is to put it into your GameCube so you can transfer Jirachi into your Game Boy Advance Pokemon game, that is, if you're in the US, because in Europe they got Celebi instead. They aren't listed on Bulbapedia, but screw it! If it's playable on an official console or PC and has the Pokemon logo on it, let's just count it and go to 48, or 49 if you count the European disc separately. Why must Europeans make everything so much more complicated? If you think Europe makes this list complicated, just wait and see how much weird shit has come out of Japan. Did you know that there is a Pokemon game in Japan released on the Super Nintendo, a console that came out before Pokemon Red and Green came out in Japan on the Game Boy? It's in the Picross line of games, which have an interesting story in themselves, and it was only available through the Nintendo Power service in Japan, not to be confused with the Nintendo Power magazine that released internationally. Basically what you would do for the Super Nintendo and the Game Boy as well, is you would have this blank cartridge, take it to a shop in Japan that allowed you to then download a certain game onto the cartridge for a cheaper price than buying the full cartridge retail. Then you can take it home and play the game, sort of as if you were renting the game, but you never had to return it. Nintendo released a few of these with their other IPs just slapped over it like Donkey Kong or Yoshi. And they even had an unreleased Pokemon Picross game for the Game Boy Color. This was eventually cancelled, and it did seem like it was pretty far in development. I don't think this counts as a game since it was never officially released, but at least a Pokemon Picross game did come out in 2015 for the 3DS. With our count at 50 now, let's get some easy ones out of the way before we talk about some games you might not know about and probably don't even care about. So if we look at Pokemon Ranger, the 3 Ranger games bump us up to 53 games. The Rumble games, underrated series in my opinion by the way, brings us up to 58 games, counting the discontinued mobile game which lasted for like 9 months. There's Pokemon Shuffle on mobile and 3DS, which are listed as separate games for some reason on Bulbapedia, but I'm only going to count them at 1, so 59, the 2 Snap games for 61, the 2 Trozy games, which I forgot to add the first Trozy game into this list, so 63, weird ones like Pokemon Dash, Pokemon Conquest, and Pokemon Art Academy, as well as the 2 Pokken games, which are basically the same game but ports, but screw it, we'll count them separately, the 2 Puzzle League games, the 2 Pinball games, the 2 TCG games on the Game Boy, one was only released in Japan, the 2 Detective Pikachu games, which also had one of them only released in Japan, and the 2 Pokepark games bring us up to 78 games. That covers pretty much all of the biggest non-main series games that we haven't talked about yet, but wait a second, is there something missing? Something mysterious, even? Pokemon Mystery Dungeon is arguably the most popular series of Pokemon games that aren't the main series games. Here are the 8 Mystery Dungeon games. Like the main series games, we'll count the 2 different versions of basically the same game as 2 separate games to bring us up to 86 games. This seems correct, right? There couldn't possibly be more Pokemon Mystery Dungeon games, could there? Well, there is. There's a 9th and a 12th and every number in between those. 3 of those games were available only on the Wii in Japan to bring us to 89. They are called the Adventure Squad series, with each game being called Keep Going, Blazing Adventure Squad, Go For It, Light Adventure Squad, and Let's Go Stormy Adventure Squad. Since one of them has a Let's Go in the title, does it technically make it a Let's Go game too? Either way, these are all smaller Mystery Dungeon games, each focused on a different type. Surprisingly, these 3 games share more differences compared to the other paired Mystery Dungeon games with separate dungeons and Pokemon in each too. There is one more though. Are you familiar with South Korea? Not to be confused with the other Korea, but for a while, not many Pokemon games were officially released in South Korea, or North Korea for that matter, which I'm sure you probably expected. This stems from a long history of tensions between Japan and the Korean peninsula, and as a result, not many Pokemon games, or Japanese products in general, were released in Korea. Now to get back on topic, Pokemon Mystery Dungeon Gold Rescue Team released in South Korea only in 2007 for the PC. This was just a demo apparently, although it is listed as a separate game on Bulbapedia and is no longer playable. Does this count as a Pokemon game? Screw it, let's bring it to 90. There's a few other games like Mystery Dungeon Gold Rescue Team that were only released in Japan or some other part of Asia. These are mostly just arcade cabinets since arcades are very popular in Asia and aren't very popular elsewhere. There's such little information on most of these though, but some are puzzle games, some are rhythm games, and some are pinball style games among some others. Some of the coolest ones are the Pokken arcade machine, which did release in North America in 2015, and Pokemon Prince Club B. I don't know what happened to Pokemon Prince Club A since it apparently just doesn't exist, but this is basically a Pokemon photo booth. Is it a game? What about this one then? Pokemon Crayon Kids. It came out in 2001 and lets you color on a touchscreen. Screw it, let's count it, and all of the other ones totaling for 16 cabinets to take us to 106. The funny thing about the Prince Club B game is that it was the only Pokemon arcade cabinet made by Sega. Sega and Nintendo were bitter rivals in the 90s and very early on in the 2000s, so it would be weird if there were other Pokemon games released on Sega hardware, wouldn't it? Well, what if I told you there are more Pokemon games on Sega hardware? Ever heard of the Sega Pico? Me neither, since it's an educational console made for kids only released in Japan. There's 7 games for it that were released over the course of 8 years, with the last one releasing in 2010 featuring Pokemon from Black and White. They teach you how to count and read, some of us could still use this, and must have been decently popular for them to be around for 8 years. Counting all of these games, we go up to 113. Now to focus more on things that were released internationally, there were 11 games released for a Pokemon-themed handheld console that some of you might not even know about or remember. This was called the Pokemon Mini, released in the early 2000s, which I was lucky enough to get around the time it came out when my local Toys R Us was closing, had a liquidation sale, and was selling this console that nobody was buying even though Pokemon was slapped onto it. I remember getting it for only a couple of dollars a game at most, and I thought it was a really cool console as a kid. The games were very simple, like Pokemon Zany Cards, which had some basic card games on it, Pinball, which was pinball, and even a Pokemon Tetris game. It was literally called Pokemon Tetris. This one is really weird to me because I didn't have this game, but Pokemon and Tetris are 2 of the best-selling video game franchises of all time, and when they did a collab game, they released it on this. And that's 124 games, right? And that's 122 games. According to Bulbapedia, there's 122 known Pokemon games, so we're done, right? Nope. Okay, our count's actually at 124, I just miscounted while scripting and caught it while recording, but there's a few more games we want to talk about. Now, I don't know if I'm miscounting, which is possible because I just did, or if Bulbapedia miscounted, but there's definitely more than 122 games to talk about. Perhaps Bulbapedia wasn't counting arcade cabinets or some of the demos they had listed, but let's rapid fire through some of the ones that I missed, which include most of the mobile games, Pokemon Go, Magikarp Jump, all that jazz, this weird typing game that came with a keyboard, Pokemon Dream Radar and Dream World, which are apparently games, Pokemon Battle Chess, yeah, that existed, Pokemon Art Academy, and these weird Pokemon educational games that feature Professor Oak's real voice actors called Pokeroms. I had some of these games as a kid and they had different artworks on the CDs, but were all the same exact game. This brings our count to, I think, 158, counting the Flash games that are listed on Bulbapedia, the TCG games like TCG Online and the upcoming Pokemon TCG Live, various weird Japanese mobile or other downloadable games like the Thieves and the 1000 Pokemon on the 3DS, Pokemon Dancing, Pokemon Band, and even the 2 Facebook Pokemon games I never heard of. I'll have a link to Bulbapedia's full list of games in the description, of course, so you can check it out if you want to, and see some other weird ones that I brushed over and don't really have that much time in this video to talk about since there's just so many obscure Pokemon games. So 158 with an asterisk. That's all, right? Well, there's some more random handheld only electronics like this cool Pokeball thing I have from Tiger, and these 2 Pokemon Pikachus, and the Pokewalker, which if these count as games, could bring us to 167. They are listed as toys in Bulbapedia, but they have screens and a button, so I'm counting it. Now what about games that don't really focus on Pokemon, but have a strong Pokemon presence? There's 6 Super Smash Bros. Games that allow you to fight with only Pokemon on Pokemon themed stage with items from Pokemon games in the main series. Is this a Pokemon game then? I would lean more towards no, since the count for this total has to at least have Pokemon as its main focus, which Smash Bros. Games do not. There's a few other examples of things like this, like Tetris 99 having a Pokemon collab for Legends Arceus, and a game called Harmonite, which is a 3DS rhythm game that had some Pokemon songs in it. I'm not going to count these as Pokemon games for our sake, but it does count for something, along with these other weird forms of Pokemon software that aren't games like this interactive Pokedex app, these strategy guide apps, and Pokemon Sleep, whatever that is if it ever comes out. So for the final count, 167. Sort of. This video was really weird to make and required me to look into games I never even knew about, and was of course inspired by this Mario video that is constantly in my recommended for weeks. I haven't seen that video yet, but I'm sure it's great and follows a similar formula to this, and I just saw the title and did what most PokeTubers thought and said, oh, that's cool, but Pokemon. I think the real question this video turned into is what even counts as a video game in the first place. I can definitely see an argument for things like Pokemon Box and Pokemon Dream Radar not being games, but I guess that's really up for interpretation. Now there's so many Pokemon games, and for a little bit of fun trivia, 167 games over the course of Pokemon's 26-year life cycle as of recording this video breaks down to about 6 Pokemon games released per year, and arguments can be made that this number could be a bit less or even a bit more if I missed some games. And an argument can also be made for leaving a like on this video since it helps a ton, and you should also subscribe for more Pokemon videos. Check out my Twitch channel, link in the description to see me stream some of these Pokemon games live, or my extra channel, also linked in the description for the stream highlights if you missed them live. With all that out of the way, I want to thank you for watching, hope you have a good rest of your day, I will see you all next time, and bye bye.